All right, folks. The ICC has issued arrest warrants for both Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar on charges against crimes against humanity. Both leaders have been issued these warrants, and Amal Clooney also played a key role in the arrest warrants for both these individuals. I will be playing the video in its full entirety, and I also want to ensure everyone that we will be giving our commentary at the end of this video. So let's go ahead and pull this up here for us all to enjoy.
I can also confirm today that I have reasonable grounds to believe, on the basis of evidence collected and examined by my office, that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant bear criminal responsibility for the following international crimes committed on the territory of the State of Palestine from at least the 8th of October 2023. The crimes include starvation of civilians as a method of warfare, willfully causing great suffering, serious injury to body or health or cruel treatment, willful killing or murder, and intentionally directing attacks against a civilian population, as well as crimes against humanity of extermination and or murder, persecution, and allegations of crimes of committing other inhumane acts. It's alleged that these crimes were committed in the context of the ongoing armed conflict and as part of a widespread and systematic attack against the civilian population of Gaza, pursuant to a state policy. Unfortunately, these crimes continue to this day. My office submits that these individuals, through a common plan, have systematically deprived the civilian population of Gaza of objects indispensable to human survival. We have reached that conclusion based upon interviews with survivors, many eyewitnesses, experts, from satellite imagery, statements from Israeli officials, including the two individuals subject to the present application, as well as based upon several hundred authenticated videos, photographs, and audio recordings, many of which were taken and shared by victims and eyewitnesses themselves. This systematic deprivation resulted from a decision to impose a total siege on Gaza by completely closing the three border crossing points, Rafah, Kerem Shalom, and Erez, for extended periods of time, and by arbitrarily restricting the transportation of essential supplies, including food and medicine, through the border crossings after they were reopened. The siege, the total siege, also involved cutting off cross-border water pipelines from Israel to Gaza, which is the principal source of clean water for the population in Gaza. It was cut off for prolonged periods beginning on the 9th of October 2023, and it was accompanied by the cutting off or hindering of electricity supplies to Gaza from the 8th of October 2023 until today. That conduct took place alongside attacks that killed civilians, including people queuing for food, the obstruction of aid delivery by humanitarian organizations, and attacks on aid workers that forced many of those same humanitarian organizations to either cease operations or limit their life-saving efforts in Gaza. The tragic effect of the use of starvation as a method of warfare against Gaza's civilian population is acute, it's visible, and it's widely known, and it's confirmed by multiple witnesses and victims, including local and foreign medical doctors. That starvation has caused and continues to cause deaths, malnutrition, dehydration, and profound suffering among the population. Famine is already present in some areas of Gaza, and it is imminent in others. My office charges Netanyahu and Gallant as co-perpetrators and as superiors in the commission of these alleged crimes. Israel, like all states, has the right to defend its population. It has every right to ensure the return of hostages that have been criminally and callously taken. Those rights, however, do not absolve Israel of its obligations to comply with international humanitarian law. Intentionally causing death, starvation, injury, and suffering to the civilian population, including so very many women and children, are criminal means to achieve military and political goals. That's what we allege. As I have repeatedly underlined, since last year in Egypt, in Israel, and in Palestine, and again this year, those who do not comply with the law should not complain later when my office takes action based upon solid evidence. That day has come. Today, we underline in the clearest possible fashion that international law and the laws of armed conflict apply to everyone. No foot soldier, no commander, no civilian leader, no one can act with impunity. Nothing on earth can justify willfully depriving human beings, including women and children, babies, the old and the young, of the basic necessities required for life. Nothing on earth can justify hostage taking or the targeting and killing of civilians. The independent judges of this International Criminal Court are the sole arbiters as to whether the necessary standard for the issuance of warrants of arrest have been met. The judges of the International Criminal Court must be now given the space to do their work and to dispassionately and objectively review the evidence that we have submitted. Should the learned judges approve my applications and issue the requested warrants, I will work closely with the registrar of the court to apprehend the named individuals. I call upon and count on all states, especially state parties to the Rome Statute, to approach this application and the subsequent judicial decision that will be rendered with the same seriousness they have shown in other situations. I also stand ready to work with non-state parties in our common pursuit of justice and accountability. It is critical in this moment that my office and all parts of the court continue to conduct our work with full independence and impartiality. And I insist that all attempts to impede, to intimidate, or to improperly influence the officials of this court cease immediately. My office will not hesitate to act pursuant to the provisions of Article 70 of the Rome Statute if such conduct continues and persists. We will also submit further applications for warrants of arrest if and when we determine, after independent and objective analysis, that the threshold of realistic prospect of conviction has been met. My office is advancing multiple and interconnected additional lines of inquiry, including concerning reports of sexual violence during the 7th of October attacks in Israel and in relation to the large-scale bombing that has caused and continues to cause so many civilian deaths and injuries and so much suffering in Gaza. I renew my call for all parties to the current conflict to comply with these basic principles of law without any further delay. I also wish to emphasize that the principle of complementarity at the heart of the Rome Statute will continue to be assessed by my office as we take action in relation to the alleged crimes and alleged perpetrators, and as we move forward with other lines of inquiry. But complementarity requires us to defer to national authorities only when they sincerely engage in independent and impartial judicial processes that do not shield suspects from accountability and which are not a sham. It requires thorough investigations at all levels, addressing the policies and actions underlying these applications.
All right. First and foremost, again, let me just correct something. So the chief prosecutor of the ICC, the International Criminal Court, is seeking these arrest warrants for leaders of Israel and Hamas. So this has to deal with, again, with the conflict that's taking place in Gaza. So if it does get approved, if the panel of judges do approve, then we could probably see these arrest warrants come into action. So I want to point out just a couple of things here. First of all, let me go ahead and pull up this article here. Israel is not a member of the court, so even if the arrest warrants are issued, Netanyahu, as well as his colleague, do not face any immediate risk of prosecution. So, I'm sorry, folks. But Khan's announcement deepens Israel's isolation as it presses ahead in Gaza, and the threat of arrest could make it difficult for the Israeli leaders to travel abroad. Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz said the chief prosecutor's decision to seek arrest warrants against Israel's leader is a historic disgrace that will be remembered for forever. He said that he would form a special committee to fight back against any such action and would work with world leaders to ensure that any such warrants are not enforced on Israel's leaders. So already right off the bat, even though we heard that long explanation, it is abundantly clear that Israel will probably dodge these claims and most likely not face any kind of consequences whatsoever. Plus, there is the United States of America, too. The Hamas militant group denounced the ICC's prosecutor's request to seek the arrest for its leaders. Benny Gantz, a former military chief and member of Israel's war cabinet with Netanyahu, harshly criticized Khan's announcement, saying Israel fights with one of the strictest moral codes, respects international law, and has a robust judiciary capable of investigating itself. Has he not been paying attention to what the IDF has been posting on TikTok or Twitter? You know, because last I checked, during these last 8 months, going now on to 9 months, I think we saw a lot of war crimes and abuse of power and men, women, and children starving in Gaza. And the IDF doing those cringe TikTok dances while they're shooting at civilians, launching artillery at civilian locations, doing aerial bombardment on civilian locations. They go on to say the state of Israel is waging one of the just wars fought in modern history, following the reprehensible massacre perpetrated by the terrorist Hamas on the 7th of October. The prosecutor's position to apply for arrest warrants is in itself a crime of historic proportion to be remembered for forever. Remember for generations. Other Israeli leaders, including the opposition leader Yair Lapid, also condemned the ICC prosecutor, who is not surprised. Color me shocked. But I also want to pull this up here as well. Amal Clooney plays key role in ICC arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Sinwar. So Amal Clooney, wife of George Clooney, Clinton donor and Democrat supporter, has been named among the experts who advised the ICC, the International Criminal Court, on seeking arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Hamas leader Yahan Sinwar. The ICC's chief prosecutor, Karim Khan, confirmed on CNN's Christian Amanpour on Monday that the court is seeking arrest warrants on the charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity surrounding the ongoing conflict in Gaza. Sinwar is facing action over the October 7th attacks on southern Israel, while Netanyahu is sought for arrest regarding Israel's strikes on Gaza. The warrants mark the first time the ICC has targeted the leader of a U.S. ally. And if you think that the Biden-Harris administration is going to allow the ICC to do this, hey, guess what? I got a bridge to sell you. In a statement released shortly after the news broke, Khan said he was grateful for the advice given to him by a panel of experts, including Clooney. Clooney is a world-renowned human rights lawyer who has worked on a number of serious global conflicts. She has been married to actor George Clooney since 2014. Well, whoop-de-doo. She represents victims of ISIS. Is the only 3 trials in the world in which ISIS members have been convicted of genocide, and in 5 other trials convicting ISIS members of war crimes and crimes against humanity. Israel and Hamas have been locked in a war after the Palestinian militant group attacked southern Israel in October. Much of Gaza has since been raised in strikes from Israel, with many of its 2.3 million residents displaced. So, what can we take away from this? Right now, the ICC and that individual, especially the people who have been filing for these warrants, still have to get it approved. Will it get approved? That's 50-50 up in the air. Even if those arrest warrants do happen, as explained earlier, Israel is not a member of the International Criminal Court. So they'll probably skate on by it. Plus, they have the protection of the United States government. I really don't see anything coming from this. This could be all just one big show to show that the ICC is not impotent or weak. If the ICC does follow through with these arrests, how are you going to enforce it? Knowing full well that Israel will not comply, and knowing damn well that the United States government won't allow anything to happen to Israel. Now, many of you might be wondering, well, why won't the U.S. let that happen? Well, there's a thing called AIPAC. There's a thing called other pro-Israeli lobby groups. And they have bought many of our politicians. And unfortunately, in this day and age, we don't live in a democracy. We have an oligarchy. And we have leaders who are bought and sold. And AIPAC invested well in both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Biden won't approve of it. Kamala Harris won't approve of it. The entire United States Senate and House, filled with our also fantastic Republican and Democratic Party officials, will not let that happen. This is historic, yes. Follow through is key. There are so many underlying variables that we have to take into account. Will the ICC actually approve of these applications against both the leaders of Hamas and Israel? And if so, should it get approved, how are you going to enforce it? You're just not going to knock on Netanyahu's door and say, police, open up. That doesn't happen. So how are you going to enforce it? And how are you going to deal with the United States government? That's a whole other issue altogether. I'm glad that some action's being done, but this all could be for show. Meanwhile, the people of Gaza are still starving.